I will start with a little disclaimer today. I am sick and have been since like Monday, so you should feel honoured because you're the only reason that I got up out of bed and got dressed today. So this is going to be part 2 of my exchange series, which I'll be doing for my DigSoc 202 digital artifact assignment. If you watched my video from last week, which was just kind of an introduction thing, you would know that I'm actually doing a 6 to 8 part video series all about exchange. Before I went on exchange, you know, I got all the paperwork and the pamphlets from UOW, but I didn't really have any first-hand experiences from people who'd actually done it. If you're looking for a first-hand perspective, then look no further because I'm going to impart all my wisdom on you because I'm just so nice. Here are my top 10 things that you should know before going on exchange. Numero uno. See, that's funny because I didn't go to Italy. The first thing you should know, obviously, if you're thinking about going on exchange or you've got the paperwork ready to apply to go on exchange, is where you want to go in the world and the great universe. I personally always knew where I wanted to go on exchange because the UK has been like the #1 place that I've wanted to go to since I was probably like 7 to 10 years old. The 3 unis that I applied for was the University of East Anglia, which was my first preference, which I ended up getting, which was great. My second preference was the University of Sheffield, and my third preference was the University of Lancaster in Lancashire. If you have a place that you've always wanted to travel to, or if you're doing international studies, for example, and you speak a language of a country, then obviously that would probably be the country that you'd be leaning towards applying to go to. Know where you want to go before you start filling out any paperwork, because otherwise it can get a bit tricky very fast. My second piece of advice is, what do you want to study? Or what are you studying? Who knows? You could be studying med science, you could be studying economics, or like me, you could be studying media under the realm of an infamous arts degree. Most of the universities that are involved in the exchange program actually offer different subjects and restrictions based on what degree you're doing. So some unis might only offer science subjects, some might only have psychology, and some might have, you know, more arts and humanities style subjects, which is the ones that I obviously honed in on. At UOW, you basically have the choice of whether you want to do mandatory subjects overseas for your degree or for your minors or your majors, or you can just do elective subjects. So basically what I did 2 subjects overseas which I got academic credit for the subjects that I would be missing in my spring semester back home. And the third subject that I did was an elective creative arts media subject. At UOW you also have the bonus option that if you pass all of your subjects, they'll just throw an international studies minor at you, which is really great because that means I basically got a minor in international studies for indulging in occasional alcoholism, which you probably shouldn't repeat, but it's true. Just know what you're studying and know where you can study it, because you don't want exchange to be the thing that makes you have to stay on at uni for that extra 6 months at the end of your degree because you didn't do the core subjects when you had the opportunity. The third piece of advice I have is a pretty obvious one, but it can be a bit complicated, is what time do you want to go? So if you're thinking of going in your autumn semester of UOW, you would be going into the summer of things like the UK and America, whereas if you went in spring like me back here in Australia, you would obviously be going into their winter. The other thing that you have to think about in terms of when you want to go is whether exchange is going to be a positive or a negative impact for your degree. For Australian students, if you're going on exchange, you can apply for what is called the OS Help Loan, which is part of your HECS, and that's either a $6,000 for 1 semester or a $12,000 for 2 semester loan that helps you with all of the costs associated with going on exchange. And as much of a help as that is, if you go on exchange in your final semester of your degree, you don't qualify for that loan because you have to have at least 6 months of study when you come home to be able to get the loan. So that's another thing to think about if you're thinking, oh, I can just go at the end of my degree, do some, you know, easy subjects. That's not always the case, and you really need to do research to figure out the exact timing before you just hop on a plane and go over there. The fourth piece of advice I'll give is, what kind of experience do you want to have on exchange? You might be like me, where you wanted to go over there obviously to get the academic benefits of it, but you also want, you know, the social environment of living on campus, or the travel experiences of being alone for the first time and having to do things and experience new cultures on your own. I think the best way to go about it is finding that balance between academics and leisure. Do you want to party all the time, or do you want to study all the time? That's basically what it comes down to. And if you can find something that has the best of both worlds, then lucky you. Number 5 is another pretty obvious one. It's, can you deal with language and cultural barriers? If you're going to a country where you can't speak the language, is that going to be a hard thing for you to adjust to? Are you going to take a class in that language, or maybe learn some of the basics before you go over there so that you can actually function in everyday society? The main reason that I chose the UK is because it's an English speaking country, and the culture over there, it is very different to ours, but it's kind of almost the same. If you're doing international studies or you have a second language that you speak, then go for it. Go to the country that you speak the language of. But if you're like me and English is your only language and you have pale skin and you like cold weather, then England is probably the best bet for you. Number 6 is always the dampener or the downer that comes with all of our exchange and travel dreams and aspirations, and that is, can you afford to go on exchange? I first decided I wanted to go on exchange towards the end of my first year of uni, and at that point I had a part-time job, but you know, I didn't have enough money saved up to think I can get on a plane tomorrow. Throughout the first semester of my second year, I picked up another couple of part-time jobs. I worked my actual job. I had a market stall where I sold all of my clothes and stuff like that. I obviously had financial help from my family as well, and I also had a $1,000 travel grant from the uni, which you get based on your marks, so make sure you have good marks. I was very conscious of my savings, and I had a mark that I wanted to reach, and I knew that I had to reach that by a particular date so that I could organise things like flights and visas and accommodation. You might just want to go over there and study and then come straight home, or you might want to go over earlier or stay later like I did and go travelling, and obviously your expenses are going to be different based on that. I will do a later video on that, how to finance your study abroad experience, because even though we hate talking about it, it's something that we all need to know. The 7th piece of advice I will give, which is a lot more positive than the last, is do you want to travel? Where do you want to travel? Why are you going overseas? Is it to travel? Well, then where do you want to travel to? One of the reasons that I went to the UK is because it's kind of like the back door to Europe, and I've always wanted to go to Europe. Probably the most independent that you can be is learning how to deal with things when there's nobody there to help you. You don't have your parents, you don't have your friends, you don't have, you know, your uni. It's just you and places that you've never been. And I felt safe the whole time. You know, my parents were super worried about it. They're like, oh my god, you're in this country alone, you're gonna get raped and murdered. No, that didn't happen. Travel is probably the #1 deciding factor on where you want to go on exchange. Advice piece number 8 is, have you ever lived away from home before? I had never lived out of my house. I had to learn how to cook. I had to learn how to, you know, fry off chicken and do my own laundry, which is a terrifying experience. Another reason that I would say to go over in spring semester here is because if you go to the UK or America, you're at the start of their academic year, which means you'll be able to mingle with all of the freshmen, or freshers as they call them in the UK. It was all their first time at uni, their first time living out of home, just like me. And even though I was in my second year, I still felt like a first year because I literally didn't have a clue what I was doing. If you haven't lived out of home before, living out of home on exchange is probably the best thing you can do for independence and learning life skills like cooking and cleaning and washing and just functioning in society as an adult human thing. Advice number 9 is, do you have enough time to plan going on exchange? When is the right time to start planning? I don't know. I think I started planning probably about 6 months in advance. I went to a couple of exchange fairs and I started visiting the exchange office regularly and got an idea of what I wanted to do. Plan. Make sure that you have a plan and make sure that you're organised, because you don't want to miss out on going on exchange when you want to go and when it works best for the seasons and the places and the subjects that you want to do, because you're disorganised and you left everything to the last minute. Because if you miss that application deadline, that's it. Game over, Red Rover. You'll have to wait until next semester. If you need a year to save up enough money to go overseas for 6 months or even 12 months, then give yourself that time. Don't give yourself 3 months to come up with 15 grand. If you don't have a plan, then you might suffer in the long run, so make sure you're organised. And my lucky last number 10 piece of advice is a bit of a cliche sappy one, but what do you want to get out of exchange? If you want to travel more than study, then travel more than study. If you want to study all of the time because you want to get good marks out of it, then study all of the time. It's up to you. I'm not going to tell you how to organise your exchange, but make sure that you make the most of it. Don't just sit inside all day even though it's raining. As long as you're getting the most out of your exchange, whether that be traveling to a bunch of places or doing well in your subject or just meeting a bunch of new people in a bunch of new cultures, then you've succeeded. So that was my top 10 things that you need to know if you're thinking about or about to go on exchange. I'll be back next week with the next installment of my Digisoc 202 exchange series. Hopefully next time I'll be slightly less dead and ill sounding, so look out for that. And until then, if you would like to see more of my face, make sure you click subscribe, and I'll see you when I see you. Bye!